G'day, mate. What's your name?
My name is Freya.
Freya. And what do you do, Freya?
I knew this was coming. My whole drive over here.
You said you listened to the podcast.
And then it happened. Okay. I am a creative person.
A creative person. I like that.
I'll go with that.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Crowdworkcast. My name's Andrew Barnett. Thank you very much for joining me. Before I get into today's episode, it's time for me to do some shameless plugging again. Just announced I will be at the Sydney Comedy Festival for 2 nights only this year. I'm going to be at the Wildflower Wine Bar at the Enmore Theatre. Beautiful room. If you've ever been to the Enmore Comedy Club, it's that very same room. I'm going to be there on April 26 and 27, like I said, 2 nights only. So I'd love to see you along. The show is called Barney Lives. So yeah, it's just a bunch of my latest stand-up and maybe some old jokes mixed in, who knows. But that's going to be a great deal of fun. So yeah, if you want to get tickets for that, sydneycomedyfestival.com.au, and you can find tickets there, or go to my Instagram and there's a link in the bio. Now, today's guest is Freya. Now, Freya is, I didn't know Freya super well. We gigged together like a few times. She's very funny. I always thought she was very funny. And she was actually a guest recommendation from old mate Luke Heggie. Sent me a message saying I reckon she'd be a good guest. And I've got to say, he was not wrong. She was absolutely fascinating to chat to. Really, really good chat. Very, very funny comedian. Yeah, so you're going to enjoy this one. Now, she also has a show at the Sydney Comedy Festival. She's also going to be at one of the rooms at the Enmore Theatre, which is very exciting. So go check out Freya. Her show, it's very interactive, sort of improvised as well as stand-up bits. So yeah, she's one of those people you can go along and see every night of her show and it'll be different. So yeah, check out Freya. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this chat. Other than that, if you're enjoying the podcast, like, subscribe, do all that sort of good stuff. That's about all I got for you. Please enjoy this. This is my episode with Freya.
I don't consider myself a hard-hitting interviewer or whatever, but that is the one question, and everyone knows it's coming because I tell them. The one question I think guests struggle most with is, what do you do? Unless they've got a real strict, this is what I'm doing. Like I'm doing one coming up with a cricketer, and it's very easy for him.
Yeah.
He's a cricketer.
He's got like one job.
Yeah.
That's my issue.
He's retiring now, so.
Had one job. That's my issue with it too, and I was like thinking about it and everything. I was at a party the other night, and there was a few people that like we didn't know, and we sort of started making a game out of like, guess what I do for a living. Oh. And it got to me and I was like, okay, I've got 2 jobs technically, like let's just guess one first and then the other second. So it's weird to call myself a comedian when that's not making the most money, but I also don't want to just be like, oh, I work in television, like behind the scenes in television, when I want to be seen as a comedian. Yeah.
Well, let's start with comedy because that's how you and I met. And I was just saying to you before we started, I don't actually know a whole lot of your backstory. So when did you actually start comedy? Because I feel like the first time I bumped into you, you had the presence and the craft of someone who'd been doing it a little bit longer than I'd.
That's so nice.
Like than someone who was brand new.
Yeah. We first bumped into each other at Happy Endings. Is that what you're
yes.
thinking? Yeah, cool.
Which is a comedy club in King's Cross for people without Sydney context.
Yes, sorry.
It's one of those ones like where
yeah, that sounds
like
dodgy.
It's one of those club names that you go, oh, great club name, but every time you have to say, people like ask me, well, what are you doing this weekend? I was just doing Happy Endings.
Yeah.
It's in the Cross, and they're like, what?
I'm going to Happy Endings Comedy Club.
Yes.
Yeah. Or like getting the little photo, they have like a iconic little sign that you can get a photo with as well. So the first time I ever did comedy, I was in Manchester in England.
Oh, wow.
I was living over in the UK for 2 years. And, well, firstly, I was living in Edinburgh for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And I was there during the festival.
Yep.
Which wasn't planned. Like, it was just like, oh, yeah, the festival.
Oh, no, it was planned. They do it every year, you know that.
I was like, oh, the Fringe is on, like, that's cool.
So it was incidental to the fact your timing was incidental.
Correct. And I didn't have to pay a fortune
for
rent. It was just normal rent. Oh, thank
Yeah.
God. But yeah, so I was there, and the idea of comedy and stand-up comedy was like cringe to me.
Yep.
I'd never watched it before. And like the idea of like going to see it, I was like, oh, like what? No, like
A lot
that's,
of pressure.
yeah, like, oh, that poor person up there. But my partner at the time came up, and then he spent a week. He had the best week of his life, free accommodation.
Oh, yeah.
And while I was working, he'd just go and see shows, and then like we'd meet up at lunch break, and he'd take me to show, and then I'd go do dinner, and then afterwards, like, because there's just shows on from like morning right through. And all he went and saw was stand-up. And he was like, no, come to this person. Like, oh, let's go watch this show. Let's go. So I started watching stand-up. And some of it, I was like, oh my God, like that person like has the whole room. Like,
Yep.
so good. And some of it, I was like,
You're like, I could do that.
yes. I literally was like, oh my word. And I remember thinking, there was this one person I was watching. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like I could do better than this.
Okay, name them.
Oh, no, I don't even remember their name. I don't even remember. But they were Australian.
Oh,
I wonder
really?
if, like, all I remember is that they were an Australian, because they had the Australian accent, of course. That's all I remember.
Do you remember any of their
Yeah.
jokes? Let's talk about that off air, because I reckon we can work out who it was.
I'm not, like,
If you're not
they
comfortable
were
saying it
so
on air, that's
bad.
fine.
Well, no, I'm not.
Oh, that's a...
We'll talk about it off air.
Yes.
And see if we can figure out who it is. But anyway, so yeah, my first thought was like, I can do better than this. And then my second thought was like, Freya, they're at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival performing. Like, that's such a cool thing to do anyway. And I was like, shut up, like you're in the audience. And so then I decided to put it on my bucket list. I was just going to be the bucket list person.
Yep.
And it was just do 5 minutes of stand-up with absolutely zero intention of it going any further. So I got back down to Manchester. I started living in Manchester again. And I was working at a hostel. And underneath the hostel, every Wednesday was an open mic night. And so I started going just to watch. And then I got my material together. And then I went down and did it, and it went like super well, which a lot of people's first time sort of goes super well.
Yeah.
And then the second time,
Who?
like,
Yeah.
went to shit, because I did it again a few weeks later. And I thought you had to have different material.
This is an early mistake we all make, yes?
Yes, I went and wrote a whole new 5-minute set, which like was all right, but you know, was just like not as good. And I was like, oh my God, how could it go so good the first time? It's so shit the second time. And so then I came back to Australia, and I was here for a little bit, and I was going, no, like I don't want to do, like that was embarrassing and everything. And I was like, but I often like to have like a class or something. I like to be like learning something. So I was like,
Yeah.
why don't I like go to these like comedy classes or something, and then see how it goes. And then it just sort of grew and grew and grew, and that was about 5 years ago.
Oh, wow. So which classes did you do?
I did the ones with Marcel at ITS.
Okay.
Yes, Improv Theatre Sydney.
Yes. I remember... I haven't done much over there. I remember there was a guy who ran that, who I interacted with quite a bit for a little while, and I'm not sure if he's still in charge. But yeah, there's quite a few, I think, people now who've come through that sort of
There is, yeah.
class way. There's not heaps of classes you can do.
No.
But of the ones in Sydney, that's probably the ones where I've seen, who knows, but it seems to be the one where the people who go, oh, I did that class, there's more people who, one, are doing it reasonably well, but doing it a lot longer.
Yeah, keeping
Like,
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's a few where I think you just come through and it's just like, oh, okay. This is,
Go, oh, that was fun.
yeah.
I think the good thing about Marcel and ITS in general is that, so you finish your classes, but there's still so many other things, like pathways, I guess, they put out. And Marcel, especially for me, like he can't be doing it with all his students, but like like everyone you talk to, he's like, he gives you so many opportunities, so many times that, like, especially early on, that someone might contact me and they might go, oh, hey, like, you know, I've got this, like Marcel said you might be a good option and things like that. And as I've like grown up in comedy as well, it's gotten more like, oh, Marcel can't do this MC spot, he's put you forward, and like things have come from that.
And that's, I think, like, you know, because the debate around whether you need to do classes, whether you don't, like I think for some people that's a nice way in. I don't think you necessarily need to do it, depending on who you are and what your perspective is. But one, that's a structure, but also that most of, like I think you find out most of the work you'll get once you get in work is through someone knows you, has gigged with you, has done it, and you've done a good job, and it's through recommendations. And if you can set up, like, that's the other advantage of doing something like that, where there's a structure and there's a network that you're getting plugged into.
100%.
Then I think that's a bit of an advantage too. It's interesting because I didn't go the classes route, but I don't think it was when I started. I wasn't aware of as many. I did a workshop with, now I'm remembering, I paid money to do a 2-day workshop. I was going to say how much, but probably don't need
Don't
to.
admit it.
To do a 2-day workshop with a guy who was, I'll just say his name, Simon Palomares, who was part of the original Wogs Out of Work guys, and that sort of stuff. He's a Melbourne-based guy. And it was set up around the Roxbury, which at the time, the Comedy on the Rocks was like a competition that you do, it was like a regular thing. And they'd sort of helped put the workshop on. And so I went and did that, and it was 2 days. And part of it was like I found the actual learning how different things work and the approach to the industry side of things was probably more helpful than the actual like teaching you how to write type thing.
100%. Same with my classes. Like, don't get me wrong, the learning how to sort of write a joke, or I remember in our first class it was, hey, this is how easy it is to write like a very simple joke. Like, I feel like it was like we're doing play on words and like puns and stuff, and it was sort of like, great, you've just written 3 jokes. So it was sort of that, this can be done easily. So like that side of it was good, and yeah, we were writing material and stuff, but I think the most benefit out of going to a class was meeting people, making a network, especially as like a female, and especially someone who, like, I'm not good at like cold approaching people. Like, I used to go to open mics and just sort of sit there, and I'd see all the people like with their little besties and like everyone walking, like, oh my God, hey, and I'd be like, So it was really handy to have people that you knew and that you could be like, oh, I'm going to this one, like, you available? Just to have someone like there with you.
Yeah, I think that's an advantage too, because I'm a bit like you. I wasn't and am not particularly sort of, I don't want to say outgoing, but I'm not the big social person, and and then people like hang out outside of gigs or whatever. And I don't know what, like, when I first started doing it, like, I already had a kid, I was married, so it wasn't like, I wasn't looking for, I didn't start doing comedy because I needed an extra social circle.
Yeah.
So, but you get the extra social circle, but it was very, I think sometimes it was, like, I had that same instinct. So if you can get that, I think, from, however you get it. And I think too that the people you do those early gigs with and that have those early experiences with, for some reason, you sort of bond with each other because you're sort of in that same deep end, a bit lost, like, oh, how's this going to go? You're both, like, you're in the same situation where you're struggling to work through stuff.
You're in it together.
Yeah. And that's some of my at the time I didn't know, but I get, like, it's so funny, I've hit that thing where now I'm getting nostalgic for some of the really shit open mics I did with crazy people. But I look back and I'm like, oh, where's that, like, lunatic now?
Yeah.
Because there's so many lunatics.
Yeah, so many lunatics. And just like weird comedy that now that you've brought it up, I'm like thinking of, like, I once had this guy that he got up, put headphones on, and then just went for like his whole 5 minutes. Oh, and we all just sat in dead silence and watched for 5 minutes.
That's a long 5 minutes.
But like, yeah, people just that crazy.
The time, and it took me ages to win. So Starbar used to have a competition on Friday night called the Comedy Court. Mm-hmm. And it took me ages to win it, just because I never really brought enough people or whatever was going on, and then at the start I wasn't very good. But the night I won at the final, the guy that went on before me, and I don't know how he got to the final, got through his heat, but got up there and was super agitated, did this big rant about, like, anti-government, anti-police, ran, and then just literally dropped the microphone on the floor, walked straight out the back door and left. Like there wasn't a joke, it was just this, and he would have been maybe 21, 22, like just a young, angry, like he just a bit on edge sort of a guy. And the audience were like, there were people that I think were genuinely a bit scared.
Yeah.
Because like,
they're just going to do something drastic.
Yeah, like, or just like, when you're in the presence, close quarters of someone quite unhinged.
Yes.
You're like, where's this going?
I'm in comedy, yes.
Yeah. And he left, and I was like, whew. And then I think what helped me win that night was none of my prepared material. Was when I introduced myself and I said, "Oh, my name's Andrew, and I'm not an angry man," and everyone laughed and went, "Ah," and then I just told silly jokes, and I think it was because I went on immediately after him, and the MC, Dante, hi Dante, I'm banned from his rooms now, but he basically did no time in between. He just went on and went, "Okay, right, time to vote." They voted.
Nightmare.
And then he just brought me straight on. So there was no reset. And because I think that worked in my favour because I did that little verbal reset. Not that it was any good or whatever, but just
tension.
Acknowledged what happened. Then I think a lot, like that helped me rather than hindered me.
Because otherwise everyone would still be like, did we all just witness that together? Whereas you're like, we all witnessed it, he's gone.
Yeah.
Like,
and then
new bit.
Good,
yeah.
thank God, everything's back on track. And so I think because I was the contrast of being fun after being dreadfully uncomfortable, I think got me some extra votes. So I probably owe that lunatic I've got I don't know where it is. I've got the certificate somewhere here.
Did you get a certificate?
Yeah, in framed in
Stop it.
like behind perspex.
Stop it.
King of the Comedy Court. They only ran it once every 3 months they handed that award out. So.
And you won one.
I won one, yeah.
That's good.
I think Wolfie won one time. Joe Camino, who was Joe Mifsford at the time, probably won one. Zoe Pelbart, who I don't think even does comedy anymore, probably won it. Yeah. There was some, but those are the people, like, you realise the amount of people, like, just thinking, I actually did a gig with Joe recently, and we were talking about just the people we used to interact with there all the time. Because like, at that stage, you'd never get, like, we weren't getting sort of regular paid work, but we could pretty much get most Friday and Saturday nights, he'd put you on there.
Yeah.
So you'd go in, and so we'd spend, over the course of a month, 2 or 3 weekends together, just sitting, chatting, trying to work it all out. And it wasn't financially rewarding, but it was good.
You got the certificate.
I got the certificate, and it was a room where you could take a big swing, and
True.
It didn't matter when you fell flat on your face because no one was watching.
Except for you, that guy.
Oh yeah, he was quite crazy.
Do you reckon he did good, like he had a set that got him through to the final and then he just went on a rant?
I don't know, because that one was audience voted. So you'd people would bring their friends, try and stack the audience. But of all those audience voted ones, it was probably the fairest in that, and this is giving credit to Dante, which is a weird thing to do. But he had little voting pads, so electronic voting pads, and so you'd vote 1 to 5. So, even if, someone brought 10 friends and they all voted 5 for them, but they voted 4s and 3s for you, and then you got some of the other audience, you could still, it wasn't 1-to-1 with whoever had the most friends there won.
Yeah, okay.
So, definitely you could stack the audience.
Yeah.
But it didn't necessarily mean you were going to win. Like, if someone had just a crazy set, and everyone's friends voted 4s, then it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
So that was, I don't know how he got through though. It was bizarre. The only time
had to be he had a set, like he had a big plan or something.
Yeah, I don't know, because it's like one of those ones where, like he if he had friends there that night, they certainly didn't leave with him.
Surely he didn't have friends. Because imagine if a friend did that to you.
Yeah, I know. It was a truly bizarre thing. And actually, last night I did a corporate that was hooked up through a mate of mine. His wife her business was looking for someone, and so then she rang me and she said, "Would you do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And then I was talking to her like after the gig, and she's like, "Oh man, that went so well." And then we were just chatting.
Did it actually go well?
It did actually
Okay,
go
good.
well, especially for a corporate.
Yeah, for a corporate.
But I was like, she seemed not surprised, but like genuinely like happy that it went well. And then she said, like, someone was asking about how long I've been doing it, and I said, "Oh, about 14 years now." And then she goes, "Yeah, I remember we came and saw you once, like early days, and it was at one of those Star Bar gigs." And I'm like, I don't think she's seen me since. Like, she knows I've been doing it, knows I've been getting better.
That's why she was so surprised.
But I think her context was me probably 3 years in Star Bar, basically doing an open mic competition.
Yeah.
So, good news, I've improved.
Good.
Since then, and yeah, that tended to go well. But
I think about that too when people like, when I first started comedy, I had a boyfriend, and we've since broken up. But like, we're still like, really, he's over in England.
Yeah.
And so like something will happen and I'll go, oh, like we'll like text about something just like every few months or so. So we're still in like good contact. But I feel like I want to be like, I'm a lot better than I was. Like, don't tell people I'm shit. I'm a lot better than I was.
And that's the hard bit, is early days is when you're more likely to have to, like, to get on. They want you to bring people. They want you to, like, and so, yeah, like people see you like.
And it's a novelty for your friends to come, like,
yeah.
Oh, we've got a friend who's doing whereas now, like, I'm like, who wants to come to this? And my friend's like, no.
Yeah,
like,
no.
just let us know when there's like a big one that you want us to come to.
The one that gets me now is when people go, like, I'll be doing the Comedy Store or whatever, and people go, "Oh, cool, we'll come along and support you." I'm like, I don't care if you come to that one. I don't get any of the ticket sales. It's a flat fee.
Yeah, so true.
Like, come when I say, this is my show, I need you to come for a festival. That's when I want to sit. That's when I want the support. But people just don't understand. Like, yeah, man, we'll buy tickets, we'll come support you. I'm like, okay, I don't get the ticket money.
My money show.
If that's empty, I get paid the same if it's full. But,
I think that as well about, it's like a lot of people will be like, oh, when's your next gig? Like, when, like, and I'll go, don't come to any of these ones. Like, you'll see me for about 10 minutes max, and then you might get some crazy shit in there. Don't come to that. I'll tell you what gigs to come to. Like, these ones don't. Don't bother with these ones. Like, I've still got some wild cards in there. Like, don't waste your time.
And they're always the ones that ask you to promote it too. Hey, man, can you share the gig?
Yeah.
It's like, yep, I'll share the gig.
Yeah, you go.
It's like, So 5 years. So are you doing festivals or anything at the moment, or are you?
So last year I did my first festival. So my favorite thing to do is MC.
Yes.
I prefer.
You're a very good MC.
Yeah, I prefer to MC over spots because, mainly as well for like other comedians, and no one's ever said it, but I feel like every now and again I get a weird vibe that people are doing, because I'm not a very good joke writer.
That is an amazing thing to say on a
thing
comedy podcast. Yeah,
I'm just like, my writing is not the best. I'm going off pure personality and charm. But so, and even when I am like, right, Freya, you've got new material to try out, like, don't talk to the audience. Like, just like blinders on, focus. I can't help myself. And so often, like, it'll be, person with great set, person with like perfectly like timed, everything like jokes. And then halfway through I get up and I'm like, where are you from? Like, don't look at me like that, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes back, and then the next person has to go back to jokes. And it just puts a weird riff in the...
Weird change in the energy.
Yeah, weird change, and then it's got to go back. And so, and I love emceeing anyway. So, like, that's what I like to do. So when I first sort of, all my friends at like the same level started doing festival shows, and I was like, like, could I do a festival show? Like, is this something, blah, blah, blah. And then, talking to a few people, and I remembered one of my favourite, I remember him, this guy called Russell Hicks, who's an American guy who lives in the UK. And I went and saw him at the Edinburgh Festival when I was there, and I ended up seeing him, I think, about 5 or 6 times, because his show was just pretty much purely crowd work. And like, I cried laughing each time, and I was like, well, why don't I do something sort of similar to that, where I can still get through an hour. So I did that at the end of last year, and my biggest worry was that trying to keep up my persona for an hour.
Yeah.
But I did it. By the end of it, like I sat in a chair and just stared for a while. Like I was so drained. But it like if I could do it and like keep up the hour and everything like that. So that was a lot of fun. So I did 2 shows for Sydney Fringe last year. And then I just got my dates for Sydney Comedy Festival.
Nice.
For this year. So I'll do the same sort of style of show again. And then I've already had a few ideas. We'll hopefully apply for Sydney Fringe again for this year. And then maybe next year I might start doing other cities and things like that.
So with how much structure do you put into your, like that style of show? Because I know like I probably the equivalent I've worked with would be a guy named Ian Bagg. You know Ian Bagg? He's a Canadian. He lives in LA. He's blown up recently on YouTube and stuff.
You know when you hear a comedian, you feel like you can see their name written somewhere?
You've probably seen his clips online because he's sort of gone, he went big on YouTube and stuff with the crowd work sort of, when crowd work became a big online thing, like he got on, but he's always done crowd work. He's amazing. And, but working with him, you see I've always seen he's got, I suppose what you'd call tent poles that he hangs things from. So he knows what areas he wants to work in, what he wants to talk to the audience about. But he's because he's in the moment and very quick and very flexible with it, he can pivot in and out. And because he knows his jokes so well and knows, you know, his voice so well, he can, he's very good at bouncing about. When you do the hour, like how much are you going, okay, well, I can probably, I'm interested in talking to the audience about these areas and going between, or do you just go, I'm going to go out there and we'll start with this, or we'll start with that?
Go for it. Well, when I was preparing it and deciding, my first thought was, let's see how much we can do. Like I was thinking it would be like, say, 40% crowd work, 60% sort of written, structured stuff. And by that I mean my structured stuff would kind of sound like it's still crowd worky, that I'd be like, oh, like who's been overseas recently? Chat to them a bit about that. And I was like, oh, I was just in Argentina. Oh, this story just happens to come out about Argentina.
And that I think that's using crowd work well, I think, personally. Like that's the approach I think I like to see, because if you know you've got something you can go to, you can delve deep. You don't have to rush to the funny straight away with the conversation. So you can delve deeper, find something potentially more funny or interesting, and then go to if you know how to pivot.
Coming.
Yeah. So you sort of, I don't know, that's when I find I've bought myself freedom to really go into the crowd work and sit in it for a bit rather than...
And usually the sitting in it is where you get like the better stuff. Whereas, and like I feel like a lot of people, because I see a lot of people trying crowd work, and people come up to me like, oh my God, like you can crowd, and I'm like, yeah, but you can write jokes. I've just watched you, and like that's crazy to me. Like you're just better at that, and I'm just better at this. Like it's just sort of how it is. But anyone who says like, oh, I just want to learn crowd work, I want to learn crowd, and I said the way I started sort of easing into it, and then realizing that this is actually more my style, more I want to do, was. I had a joke about growing up in Gundagai, and so I'd start it with like, you know, is anyone here not from Sydney? Is anyone here from like a small country town? And then like, you know, there's always someone. And I go, what's your town famous for? Like there's always something that they've got.
And then you go into your dog on the tucker box
Yeah, exactly.
bit.
And then I have that to like bounce off and then go like, oh, my town. Like we all know what my town's. And someone's usually like, dog on the tucker box. And I'm like, yeah.
Well, it's not even in Gundagai. It's 5 miles from Gundagai.
Don't start me. They tried to move it in like a few years ago. Town went wild.
Ruins the song.
Town went wild.
Dog on the tucker box. I cannot tell you, because when I was little, we were down a place called Corowa on near Albury. And the amount of times we'd visit family in Sydney every Christmas, the amount of times we'd stop at the dog and just...
That's what he's there for.
It was
good
times. Good times. Gundagai. We used to actually a few times we'd go off the highway, and I think early doors too. I don't even know if Gundagai was bypassed at that stage, so we'd go through Gundagai.
You have to go through it, probably.
And then I remember, is Bookham? Bookham's not
Bookham's
too...
a bit closer to Sydney.
Yeah. I remember throwing up at Bookham, getting car sick. But Bookham always, because I was a mad cricket fan, and always they had a beautiful little oval you could see from the road that had old picket fence. Like oval, it looked very idyllic.
Did you ever go to Cootamundra?
Cootamundra, I did on school stuff.
To go
when I was
see
in school.
Don Bradman's birthplace?
No, well, actually, it's funny. My old man's he just had a big operation. He's laid up for for a couple of months, and so before he had the operation, Mum and him decided to take a little trip. And they went to Bowral, and the first photo we get is him next to the Don Bradman statue down there.
Everyone thinks he was born in Bowral.
No,
he was born in
Cootamundra.
Cooter.
And the Cootamundra Waddle is my friend, the John Williamson song. Do you remember that one? Oh, yeah,
I know,
you're probably too young.
Oops.
So John Williamson, great Australian country folk singer, I suppose.
I do know John Williamson.
Yeah, so he had a song called the Cootamundra Waddle, and I remember he played it. This is how interesting my childhood was. I remember going to see him play the Corowa Golf Club.
Aww.
And
It was huge.
Yeah, oh man. And when he played Crocodile Roll, bet you don't even know that song either.
I don't know that one either.
Well, it's like you've never listened to Macca on a Sunday morning.
Sorry.
Oh man. So Gundagai, so when did you obviously moved away for uni?
So Gundagai, born to I think about 10.
Yep.
I was 9 or 10, and then moved to Wagga.
Oh, nice.
And then did high school through Wagga.
Which high school?
Mater Day.
Mater Day
Catholic College.
What a motto.
Ooh, actually, I've lied to you. I spent 4 days at Coringal High School.
A mate of mine went to Coringal.
Who?
He's way older than you.
We didn't go together?
Thank you for humouring that, but he's my age, so...
I did 4 days at Coringal.
Yeah.
Because I was more artsy. Mater Day's very like sports. Like they do like all the musicals and they're like good musicians and whatnot, but they were very like heavily sports, and I was more like drama and stuff. And so I was like, no, I should go to Coringal because it was more the performing arts place. And then after 4 days, I was like, nah. And so just went back to Mater Day.
Actually, you know what's probably closer in your timeline to you? My brother ran the Coringal Hotel.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yes.
That is a good hotel.
Yes.
They used to have 2 for 1. Did he put the 2 for 1 on Tuesdays?
I don't know. What years would he have been?
Or did he get rid of the 2 for 1 on
No,
Tuesdays?
he wouldn't have got rid of 2 for 1 Tuesdays. No, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, that place.
He knew how to get people in.
Tuesdays 2 for 1 meals. So good. Yeah, so then when I was like leaving, I was like, going to go to Sydney or Melbourne or something for uni. And I was really into theatre. Like I thought I was going to do like backstage sort of theatre stuff, and then did an open day, and because you had to choose 2 subjects, and so I was like theatre, and then I was like, I guess television. I'll do this television thing as well, and then like immediately fell in love with this TV course, and so I was like, I'll go to Sydney and I'll do the TV course, but pretty much everyone you spoke to in the industry was like, no, if you want to do TV, go to CSU in Wagga. So I did that.
I was going to say CSU's big in the communications.
Yes. So
sort of
their
world.
Bathurst campus has like essentially, if you want to be a journalist, that's where like so many journos have come from, and like other different things. They have radio and stuff like that. But CSU in Wagga randomly had this TV, and like we had a studio, we had editing, we had audio booths. Like they were decked out. We had an OB truck that we could take out, and like it was just students. We had everything.
That's worth a fortune.
It's now shut down.
Oh wow.
They shut it down.
Okay.
Upsetting, very upsetting. But yeah, so I did that, and very true to form. The most recent job I had in TV, they pretty much told me that they went through had 100 people apply, 100 bouts, and they went through first of all to like cut them all down and went, right, these are all the CSU people, which I was in that pile. And then I got the job.
Nice. So So you're talking about working sort of behind the scenes in TV. What area do you work? Like, what's your specialty?
So I'm sort of they call us like studio operators, which just means like I can do a few things. And so at the moment, I do a lot of auto cue rolling. So just roll teleprompter.
Oh man. Ooh.
Does that stress you out?
Yes. So when I used to work at Fox, we used to do a segment on Sunday nights on Matty Johns, and that was live, and we'd use the auto cue scripting, and every now and then, because the people running the auto cue were either like were off news or off, they're used to sport.
Yep.
Sometimes they weren't, depending who they were, if it was their first time working with us, if we riffed anything in between,
Yep.
they'd panic and go looking for it in the script. And the
Yep.
amount of times on live TV I'd turn to the camera and just see words flying. So,
That auto cue operator like hated you guys. So,
Oh,
like, 'cause
yeah.
that part stresses me out.
yeah.
News is like perfect because like every word is perfectly said, and like so I work at Channel 10, and so it's Sandra Sully is mostly like she's got it like spaced. She puts spaces in where she like knows.
So
she's
she
gonna
writes her own
pause.
script?
So she gets the script, and then she goes as she's like proofreads it. She
Yep.
also goes through and puts like breathing spaces in. So it's like
Nice.
you could almost like just set it at the one rolling and just like leave it. She's got it down pat. But at the start, I was like so like, but now like you'd be doing your speech, my feet would be up, and I'd be like playing a game over here like while rolling it.
That's the thing too, is it's so much. Because the first time I ever used auto cue, it's so much more stressful reading because you're not used to reading out loud.
Yeah.
And even if you've done it a bit, you're not used to reading out loud going, oh, this is on TV.
And like words are moving. And also you're staring technically like right down the barrel.
Yes.
And there's like a little red light above you. There's a person, you can sort of see their arms like behind you.
The hardest thing is I found when we were first doing it so I do it as a duo with James Rochford, he's on our thing, was the professor, and the instinct to read his thing and just be reading it under my breath. Because I just you know, like when you're skipping and you're like, I'm coming in, like that.
You see your name's like down the bottom and you're like, oh, it's me, but you have to wait till you're up
and
the
you
top.
got to wait till you. So you, it takes a bit to get used to.
Yeah.
So you roll that for Sandra Shelley.
So I roll that for news. I'm currently I had that job. I was full time at 10 for about 2 years, and then about 6 months ago I have gone freelance.
Oh,
so I
nice.
can concentrate more on comedy and stuff.
Did you ever work with Emma Lawrence over there? She was on sport there for a while. She might have gone to
think so.
9 before you.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, the name
Yeah,
doesn't sound
yeah.
familiar. But I've also floor managed. Floor manage is like my
nice.
favorite thing. Yes, being that
Yeah.
person's like, okay, everyone, shut up. Here we go. 5, 4, and then you're like, talk, like doing all those ones and trying to communicate things. My
Yeah.
favorite thing is when someone in your ear says something like, oh, tell this person to fix up their mic. Like, it's just, I can't say that. And so I'm just going like.
The other thing is like, because you're getting talked to, but also you've got to be completely silent,
Yeah.
acknowledging what they're saying.
Yeah.
Like,
And sometimes you got to clarify things, and I'm like, what did you just say? Like, because you're trying to be dead silent, but you have to, and they're like, what? And I'm like, did you just say for me? Like, it's
because they're in the control room where they can
Yeah.
talk at
They
whatever
can
volume
yell.
they want. They don't care. That's that was the other thing. Like, because I I started at Fox just doing audience warm up, and that was
Nice.
always fascinated me because I'd be on the floor manager, like same comms as floor manager or whoever, so I could hear everything that was going on, like who they're talking to and that sort of stuff. And it was fascinating realizing how much talking is happening to people who are live on TV.
Yes.
That's the other hard thing to, like, the other instinct when I was first doing that was like, you know, someone would talk to you in your ear and your instinct is to turn and like.
And like stop completely what you're, and you're just
Yeah.
like,
Because sometimes they talk to you while you're talking and you're just like, oh my God. This is...
I think that too. I'm like, I don't know how, I guess you just eventually just get used to it, but.
That's where, like, you know, veteran TV people who've been doing it a long time are really good at it, and it just looks, I don't think people watching at home would realise, like, it's the ultimate duck on the top of the water. There's so much going on underneath that that you're just totally unaware of. But yeah, that's so floor managing you love.
Yes, I do love floor managing. I also did a bit of camera, but I hated that. It stressed me out, and I wasn't good at it.
So what were we doing camera for?
What have I done camera for? Studio 10.
Oh, nice.
RIP. It's gone. And then the project, on the Sunday project, would do it. That was a lot. It was very set and forget.
Yeah.
Like as long as they didn't move too much, like, you know, just every now and again, or a guest would come on and so you'd move the camera. But I was so bad. It's like a joke with a few of the other people. Like I'd be on my camera and because like, even though you know everyone, like they don't know exactly who's on camera. So it'd be like, oh, camera 3, like just pan to the left. And I'd just be off with the fairies, or I'd just be like watching the show, and I'd just be like this. And then like they'd be like, camera 3, pan to the left. And like I'd sort of like look over and the other cameramen would be there and they're going, and I'd be like, hey. And then they'd be like, Freya, pan to the, and I'd go, oh shit. And then I'd be like, my left, or like the person's left, and they'd be like, just fucking pan, and like we'll tell you. I was awful. I just get too distracted.
But that's the thing too, is you can get dragged into just watching the show.
Yes.
And if you're supposed to be doing something else or concentrating on something else, then that can be
very much. I do that a lot with auto cue if I'm, say, like a particularly good like news story. I'd be like full like watching it, going like, because like my screen would be here and like my auto cue screen would be there, and I'd be like, oh, that's crazy, as it'd finish up, and then all of a sudden like Sandra would pop up on the screen again and would start talking because her first sort of lot of words already there. I'd go, oh my God, like, and I do that all the time as well.
But that's, I kind of, like, I love that those jobs are existing at the moment because there's more and more now robocams and like a few places that I've seen that where the person on air will do their own
auto cue,
which
they might have like a foot one or something.
Seems super stressful.
And it's one of those things where most of the time it'll be fine. It's those moments where all of a sudden, there's been times where I'm mid-roll, where literally words are like moving on the screen, and then the producer goes, especially like into my ear as well, they go, this package hasn't come in yet, quick move to the next. But like they also might just move something, and if you move something while it's rolling, like the whole thing just changes. So I once had a newsreader once, she was mid-sentence, and the thing just changed, and it wasn't even the correct, like all of us just sat there going, and the poor thing, like they're the one that's on the TV. It all comes back to them. I do feel bad. I'm like, I don't know what to do
that
here.
sort of stuff, stressful as.
Stressful.
You just lose.
Live TV though, that's why I love it.
But that's part of the fun, isn't it? Like if, it's why it's exciting when you like, because especially so much of that day is just, we're getting ready, okay.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3. And then the most intense half hour.
Yeah.
And then, we're done.
Let's do a rehearsal. Everything in rehearsal's fine. Everything in rehearsal's all good. And you'll go, okay, let's all go get like a drink, go to the toilet before we have to. And then you come back and something's buggered up. The auto cue all of a sudden doesn't work. And they'll go, why didn't you test it before? And I'm like, what, am I going to test it every 10 minutes? Like, which I should have probably.
But nah. But that's so why? So this is fascinating. Why did you want to do the behind the scenes TV stuff rather than being on TV? Like what was the difference?
I guess like I probably always like would be like, oh, I'd love to be the person in front, but I was very much like, oh, no, I don't have like the confidence. Like, oh no, like, or also like looks. I'm like, I'm not as pretty as like the people on like TV and that sort of thing. So like, but like I can still be part of the world, and I do love the behind the scenes anyway. It's a lot less, especially in terms of news. Like everything news is so perfectly like polished and like gorgeous and everything, whereas I'm not. And especially like even in my comedy, like it's not polished. Like it's all over the place, and it's just very like.
Yeah, there's not a lot of riffing mid-news.
Yeah, no. And that's the thing as well, like if I have to stick to something, it's like if I'm emceeing and I've got to stick to a script all of a sudden, like, whew, you'll see a change.
Yeah, it's a different...
It's something I'm trying to get better at.
I remember, that's a few years in, I was emceeing a lot, and I had a room runner say to me, he goes, mate, your crowd work's amazing, but I can see you shifting gears when you go into material. And I was like, yeah, no, I feel
I'm like that too, yeah.
But it's just
trying to get better at it. But it is, it's like, oh yeah, like, Anyway, so who here's on the apps? It's just like so obvious I'm going into it.
But I don't think it's as obvious to the audience as it is to us. as comedians, because once you know the mechanics of something, you can see it. It's like when you watch TV at home, you can probably see.
Oh.
You can go, oh, they stuffed that up, or
Yeah.
that person wasn't expecting them to cut to that at that
Yeah,
time.
that was a very quick change. Like, why
Yeah.
did we do like that? Must have been the wrong camera. Like,
Yeah.
And like same with movies. Sometimes I watch movies and I'm like, why have we all of a sudden gone to handheld? Like, and then someone's like, oh shit, like we have, like, don't point that out. Like, pointing out too many things and
Yeah, exactly.
annoys me.
Once you know the mechanics, you sort of instinctively spot them, which is where, like in stand-up, watching that, I suppose that changes. Has your appreciation, like watching stand-up, has that changed over the time you've been doing it too? Like if you went and saw those...
Huge. Mainly because people who have beautifully written material that's so clever, and just, I'm like, how the hell did you think of this? Like, it's almost like poetic. Some of them, I'm like, oh, like you've used that word perfectly, that then sets up 2 sentences later. Like that now like comes into it. And I'm like, oh, it's just so good. Like, and whereas someone in the audience is like, that was funny. Like, but like, it was only funny because this word, like, they didn't, it's almost like now that you watch newer comedians and you go, oh, hun, you just said the same word in 2 back-to-back sentences. Like, that's why that laugh wasn't as big. Like, you said dog twice type thing. You entered that sentence with dog and then said it halfway through there. Like, you can't, like...
It's
so stupid, but
pooch and canine.
Yeah, like, it's so stupid, but you've lost it. Like...
That's it's one of those things that, I think that until you're doing it a while, or until you pay attention or someone points it out to you, you never think about. But then there's... Like, I'm a bit like you in that I like... Do you find that you appreciate the comedians who are doing something you don't feel you can do as well? Like, the guys that are super well written, which you think your writing's not... Which I disagree. You've got some good bits.
Thank you,
but it's not like... Do you know what I mean? Like, your perceived weaknesses, you tend to be a bit in awe of those.
That?
Yeah.
Which is exactly the same thing, like, when people come up to me and be like, oh, you're so good at crowd. And I'm like... But like, obviously I've worked at it and I'm a lot better than when I first started doing it. And I know like all the like little tricks and shit that you can do. And also sometimes I'm like, crowd work is like, I've got set up jokes anyway, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm like, I know someone's going to be in a relation. I know this is going to be someone's second date and I'm going to go, you guys in love? And like, it makes it like, and every time like the crowd goes, oh no. And I pretend like I just said it for the first time.
Asking the couple, this is one of my, and we've done this way too many times, but I'll ask a couple if they're on a date, and it's like, oh, how long? 18 months. Well, it's getting kind of serious. Do you think you'll get married one day? And it just straight away the audience of it, and then maybe. I'm like, oh, to her, or and then, but it's just so easy. Yeah.
Like it looks like it's just off the cuff, but
yeah. Like I've done this 150 times. It's not that point of it. You go, oh, this isn't as interesting to me as it is to you. But which is, I think, too, like when there is something that you're naturally better at. Mm-hmm. I find it more interesting the comedians who want to you use that to start, but then start to try and build on the thing that they don't feel like they're as good at. Like. Do you know, like that's, I think, how you become more well-rounded?
Since I've quit the full-time job, I'm now like, well, if you've quit your full-time job, Freya, like, you need to really be doing the same hours of work. So, like, let's fill them. So now I'm trying to write a lot more, trying to do it, trying to do new bits, but I keep getting distracted. I did one the other day where I literally was like, do you guys... No, don't talk to me. And I was like, if I talk to you, don't talk back to me.
But what I would say with that is, if that's how you're comfortable getting into the stuff
finding the funny,
well then find it. Like, there's nothing wrong with writing to that strength and using that as the way into writing your new material. Like, you can still have your perfectly written joke, but because I remember, for me, like a lot of it, I talk about. Sometimes I think of it in terms of grounding yourself in the room. Like, so the corporate I did last night, like, it was, we're on sort of a balcony at a big sort of semi-outdoor courtyard area, like a pub. And, they're gathered around, they're all standing at tables and stuff and they're having feed. but most of them didn't know there was going to be a comedian. You know, they were all lovely, but it didn't make sense to me to just go from like, here's Andrew's going to do some stand-up comedy for us. Oh, okay, what's this? Straight into bits.
Yeah.
Because the gear change is too weird.
Yeah.
So in that case, I used a bit of crowd work and a bit of context of what they'd been up to for the day. And then all of a sudden, what I did on the way in was I looked at what their conference is about, and it was that they were trying to set all their corporate goals. Right, so I talked to them a bit about that and conferences, and made a bit of fun of the the situation with there, and then pivoted into, I went, oh, so you're setting the goals. How's the goal setting going? I've got a personal goal for this year, and straight into a bit about that.
Which just seems like, it naturally
Which they're like,
flowed.
oh yeah. And so before, without them thinking, oh no, you've gone into prepared stuff. So if your instinct is, that's how you're comfortable getting into your material, there's nothing wrong with using that to get into your material, as long as you get to your material that you want to try.
That's the main
then it
thing.
doesn't matter.
So all of a sudden I've got the light and I'm like, oh shit, whoops.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I think too, especially with new material, you've got to give it the best chance you can. And if that's your on stage persona, so so likable, so natural, so she's just up there chatting.
I'm just one of you guys.
Yeah.
We're just besties. Yeah.
But it seems like you're just chatting. So if you went in and did a real poetic sort of a bit, that's but she was just chatting to us before.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? Sort of got to write to your
We were just
your
chat.
persona.
Yeah, so true.
So I don't think you feel guilty about having the having the ability to do crowd work, but at the same time, I don't know about you, but I find if I'm doing too much of one thing, I start to get bored with that thing and dislike it.
Yeah, that's very true as well. And especially sometimes I can tell, well, it's kind of like if I have a crowd that's really loving everything I'm doing, I kind of not get bored because I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Because I'm so self-obsessed. I'm like, oh my God, they love me sick. But I am aware that I'm you're going to pull out that classic that, I'll ask someone if they're rich. What do you do? I'm this. I'm like, are you rich? And I go, no. Then I go, what sort of fridge have you got? And then they go, why? I'm like, double doors? You got double doors? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, fuck,
doesn't make
you're
you rich.
It's rich as hell.
Doesn't make you rich.
If it does water
I got
as
you
well.
a water out of that.
I know it is. No, and then I'll, certain things, and I'll be like, oh, you're going to pull that one out for that person. I get a bit it's a classic thing of when you have a fantastic gig, you feel great and everything, but I'm also nothing came of it. Whereas if I had a tougher crowd, I'm like, oh, I got them eventually.
Yeah, I tend to try and think about what I'm trying to get out of a gig, and sometimes there is that. Sometimes it's just it's all right just to have fun. Too.
Yeah, that's true.
The whole reason, I don't know about you, but the whole reason I started doing this because it looked like a fun job.
Yeah. So to make people laugh,
yeah. And so
what's better?
That's part of it. But I do think what I've found is I used to especially when I used to do much more crowd work when I was emceeing, but I'd found I'd go between and have a great set, and then I'd have that feeling of, oh, well, that's all just gone now. I can't, you can't go back to any of it. It's I don't really have anything in my pocket that I know is absolute gold because everything I've been doing is just in the ether.
Yes, which I've been caught out with a few times where, I'm starting with sort of my personality and crowd work and everything, and no one wants it. And I'm like, okay, let's move on to my written stuff. And then I'm starting that and I'm like, okay, they're not liking this. I don't have as big of a well of material and as many oh, they'll love this sick, because then I'll try one of those and it doesn't get a great response, and I'm like, I've just given them my best joke. I don't know what to do with you people.
That's just a universal feeling of sometimes you just
sometimes it happens.
Shifting through the gears and just go, phew. Man, and it's that happens. I've seen that happen to, and it had happened to me, but I've seen it happen to guys that have been doing it twice as long as me at gigs where it shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Where it should be fine, and they're doing, but just for whatever reason, like the audience of. I remember doing a gig at this small bar at Redfern, and it was surprise comedy. It was in the Sunday afternoon. They weren't there for comedy.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, their quiet afternoon in a nice little bar's been hijacked. And I remember I looked at I was emceeing, and I'm just trying to get something going, shifting through the gears. And I look at the back of the room, and Daniel Towns and Ben Elwood, and I forget who else was there, but they're there, and Ben Elwood is just making this shoveling action from the back of the room at me, like, dig up, man.
Ben
And it was
kills me.
but it was the perfect gig to do with those guys, because we were all like, whatever. That's the one where I think I've told the story on this before, but where the stage was right next to the door, and Dan Towns literally said goodbye to us from the stage and got off and just walked out the door. He was gone. By the time I got to the stage, I think he was over at the train station. It was amazing.
You feel like, where you're like, I don't want to see any of this crowd. There's nothing worse when you've done poorly,
Yep.
and then they have to walk past you on the way out, and some people go, good set, and you're like, shut the fuck up, I will kill you.
My favourite used to be when back in the early days too, where people would come and see you, and clearly it hadn't gone that way, but then they'd be like, it's pretty good. Like the higher their voice, like, oh
And
wow,
I will punch you directly in the face.
How bad was this? Your voice is only audible to dogs, man. I can, yeah. But that's so now you've quit the full-time job. You're freelancing in TV still, but so you've got your backup plan. The TV industry, that's not going anywhere.
Don't say that. Oh my God. Don't.
Isn't it depressing though? Seeing.
Stop.
But I get that. It is a fun. In having done a little bit in it, it's a fun environment to work in.
So much fun.
And like you said, there's all those. One of the things that amazed me is you go in how precise everything in a studio is, like lighting and everyone's got their department, and
everyone's with their departments is so like honed in, and it's all so like intricately done. Like every now and again it'll be, oh, instead of standing on this mark, for whatever reason, can we stand over here? Lighting's got to move like 3 different lights. Like, even though it all looks like it's lit, the line goes like, oh, okay, hold on. And
then little light meters there.
Yeah, they got to get that up. And
got to
then
get someone to
sounds
stand in.
Getting out, you got to get a stand in. But everyone knows perfectly what they're doing. And it's one of those things where you look around at how many people it takes so I'm currently working on Ready, Steady, Cook.
Oh,
They're
wow.
bringing back Ready, Steady, Cook. Yeah.
Philpy's doing the warm-up.
Yes, me and Steve
him.
see each other every day. We talk about comedy and whatnot.
Nice.
So I've been working on that, and so there's so many people behind it that you almost go, what the hell does this many people? But then as soon as we do okay, thank you, good night, or a stop down, they go, okay, they've just cooked something, right, let's clean up the kitchen. People come in, and because it's all got to happen quick,
Yep.
Steve's there making sure the crowd don't get bored in the 15 minutes it takes. All these people clean, they're getting ready for the next segment. It's just so many things.
Little things like that too, because I know makeup is the amount of times someone's oh, that person's shiny, so in a break straight away over patting down.
Pop.
You add stovetops and that sort of stuff into the element. There's all those things, and then you need the hero shot of the food, and that all takes time.
Hero shot. You have worked in TV. Yes, we have to stop down for heroes and whatnot, and then on top of just people, as soon as you put another element, and especially food, we have a full team of just food people that are there that go oh no, we can't have the carrots that way. They got to go this way. So many things, and there's all these herbs up the back, part of the set that they can grab from and everything. But someone's then got to water them, take them home each night, and keep them fresh. Everything's got to keep looking fresh under those lights, as I'm sure a lot of people can imagine.
Yeah,
it's bloody hot, and it's draining. These poor things are getting sprayed. Someone's looking at the plants, someone's looking at just a face, someone's looking at their clothes. Everyone's got something covered.
And
it's crazy.
It's fascinating with TV too, because I think, because everyone's at home, they've watched, people have seen so much TV that your brain knows roughly what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And when there's one thing out, the average viewer doesn't know why, but
Yeah.
it looks like something. So they're like, that looks cheap.
Yeah.
Is the first two things like sound and lighting. If they're wrong on a production,
Yeah.
like it just looks amateur.
Yeah.
And you couldn't tell. Most people wouldn't know why.
You go, oh, I don't like it. Like,
Yeah.
what is this? What
It's
is
like,
this?
oh,
Yeah.
this isn't very good.
Lighting from like Days of Our Lives or something, where it's all so soft.
Yeah.
It's all very soft and whatnot. And then you go to a studio, like, is just such a big difference. Anyway, but like a lot of people probably go like, this just looks it just looks different. It just looks weird.
Did you notice a difference with that in terms of, and this was something that fascinated me when we went to, with COVID, once people started just doing crosses and they're on Zoom and they're just on a camera that's on the laptop or whatever and it's not lit and it's not, have you noticed a difference in what is accepted on TV? Because those sort of things would never have been accepted on TV.
Huge. We have had, especially so the news is a bit better because presumably whoever, like, say you're getting expert opinion from or something like that, they'll have a bit of a better setup and they'll sort of know as well. But as well, you have some of that. But some of the worst were on Studio 10 because they'd interview like just the everyday person about like, you know, a giant pumpkin that they grew or something like that. The amount of times that like the camera would just be there and so much headroom and it'd be out of focus and then it would drop out. Like I think people, it's almost like it's not a good look, but audiences are so much more accepting of, oh, we're having some technical difficulties talking to X. Like we'll come back to them later. Whereas that would have been like hell. Like, oh my God, like someone's dropped out. Whereas now you just go like, the Zoom link is dead.
Yeah,
like,
people understand it's not on a satellite anymore. It's just, we've all had to do a video call and sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah, so I think it is more acceptable, but it does, I think it's becoming less acceptable, if you know what I mean. Like it got more and now it's getting less
And now
again.
it's like, okay, we know ring lights exist, guys.
Yeah, like technology's just sort of gotten better and it's almost like one of those things like, why can't they come into the studio now? Like,
yes,
they can do it now. Like,
that's the other thing. It's like, well, surely there's some, like we did this right up until a point, and then I think too, there's times where the cost cutting and
it's
like
huge cost cut.
You can see, they'll accept this, and then I remember when it first started. I remember there was they did a cross with I think it was on one of the Fox Sports channels. They did a cross with Ricky Stewart. And he was holding his phone down, and it was basically just shooting straight up his nose. And it was like a 5-minute.
Can't you see it though? Like I always think, like
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But what he was saying was, and then all the players realised during that if someone was being interviewed on Zoom, if you called them, that would come up so they'd wait to watch each other and then try and call each other and see what the photo in their phone that was saved would come up as.
Yeah, so true.
So it was, a bit of fun with that sort of stuff. But yeah, I do, you know, sometimes when you glance and you see the correspondent or whoever it is, or, you know, we've got now we're joined by, you know, this academic who's going to break us through this news story. And they're sitting there and you, like, at first glance, you're like, that looks normal. And then you start to go, that's not a bookshelf behind them where they've put, like, where they've clearly tried to do their own set dressing.
Yeah, and all those things, like, honestly, if you're going to do, just do the blurred background, because no matter what you've got, so distracting.
Yeah.
I look at people's bookshelves and, like, I once saw someone had their books color code, like it was like, here are the reds, and then so I've got that on my book because I watched that and I was like, oh, I like that. Like I couldn't tell you what the person said, but I was like, oh, I like that person's bookshelf like that.
That's something my wife would do.
distracting.
She'd be like, oh, that looks good. I
Yeah,
like that. We
while
should
someone's
do that.
talking about something terrible in the world. And
Yeah.
you're like,
She'd be
that
like,
bookshelf
I love
is
that
nice.
I wonder where they got that. I want to Google that.
Yeah, and this is the thing as well, like you can't, if they're talking about something terrible, you can't have colour, like, you know, something fun in the back. Like, it's just so many things that, like, it's now becoming less acceptable.
Yeah, it's an interesting world. Like, so with the plan going forward, like, what is sort of, if we did this again in 10 years' time, what's the plan? Like, plan look like? What's the dream? Like, do you want to be in TV? Do you want to be in
Bit of
comedy?
both.
Bit of both. Just
The ultimate dream would be to The ultimate dream would be Australian TV gets better and people watch it more. But the ultimate dream would to be like a game show host.
I could see that. You'd be a
I
fun
would
game show host.
Adore something. The closest thing that I'd probably want to do on Australian TV would be like Hard Quiz.
Yep.
Ideal. Or like talking about your generation back when they had that. Dream job. But I love a lot of English comedy. They're called quiz coms, where it's like, you know, the comedians are here for the laughs, but I will be asking you questions. You will have to like do some work.
Yeah.
Those like absolute.
Like your QIs, your all those sort of.
Love those shows.
That is almost a British trope now. There's that many of them, and
they're all so good.
But then there's so many versions. Like I'd like to see an Australian one that's our own, like it's its own format,
Yes.
rather than just going, we're going to do an Australian QI.
100%. I don't want to see an Australian version of those. I want us to make our own.
Yes.
I want that as well. But I adore those shows. Like, Have You Been Paying Attention? I adore Have You Been Paying Attention?
Which is a great, once again, just a great format. Like they just came up with a nice, clean,
great, easy,
simple
funny,
format.
so well done.
And then executed really well.
Yeah.
Which is the other thing too. I think sometimes with those simple formats, like if you look at the pitch on paper, like, this has been done, or this is like that, or this is like that. But then, like that pitch on paper could produce, if it's done well, can produce a really good show, which is what it is. Or if it's executed poorly, you'd just be like, that is horrendous.
This is a
what
sad
idea was that?
version of XYZ.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, so so I can actually say, that'd suit you to the ground. I reckon that'd be good.
I don't so much want to become like a stand up and touring. I'm not too like, I love it and I adore it, but I'm not sure if I want that to be like the full-time job in the future. I think I'd like to, like have some more. Almost like, say, like Hamish and Andy style thing, where like, you know, they're not touring around doing a stand-up show, but they're like having fun. They're like still doing comedy stuff. They're still like being entertainers.
Well, you're pretty active online.
Yes.
So a couple of things, because we are getting close to time, but a couple of things we want to cover before we go is, first off, let's talk about your online stuff, then you can plug where people can find you online and see all your great content. And the other thing is, I want to get the dates for your Sydney Comedy Festival show. We'll plug those. So first off, your stuff online, explain, like, what's your approach to that? Because you do, like, it's not always stand-up clips. There's a bit vox poppy stuff you do. What's your sort of like philosophy or approach to what you're
what's like my media? It's like my social media strategy type thing.
No, not your strategy, but like what if you had to sum up like why, like what you're doing?
Yep.
Like what's your approach? Are you just trying to just have a bit of fun with people on the street, or?
Yes. Well, I get a lot of clips anyway because I do so much crowd work.
Yeah.
I get a lot of good clips. Having said that as well, and this is a huge shout out to anyone, don't just put up a clip. Like, you have to have laughs. It has to be funny.
Yes.
I have had tons of times where I've gone, can't wait to clip that up. And then, like, say, whoever's, like, filmed it and, like, sent it to me, you can't quite hear the audience. I don't care. I'm scrapping the whole thing. I don't care if that was the funniest thing I've ever done. That's out. That's gone. I can't use any of that. There's been times where I've had to, kill your darlings, where I'm like, I've done my punchline, big laugh, and then I'm like, oh, this tag is so funny though, like I adore it, but the second laugh after the tag isn't as big as the first laugh. That's gone. That has to go. You can't end on a long
your
laugh.
understanding of TV production.
Yeah, truly. And like, the laugh can't come back down. Like, I've got to cut it off before the laugh comes back down.
Yep.
Like, it's just so weird. There's so many things, and I watch so many people's clips, which good on you for getting them out there, because sometimes like you just sort of like just start and then you'll learn these things along the way and then you can go back and delete the old stuff.
Yeah,
start.
This is the amazing thing, because I didn't post anything for years, but that idea of if I'd in the first few years trying to post stuff, like it's such a different world now with that sort of stuff. Like even now I'm like, I'll post something and look at it 6 months later and just go, oh, what the?
Yeah. So I think like the audience laugh is a good indicator anyway. Because if you post something without a huge audience laugh, like that you were like, oh no, that's really funny though. 6 months later, you watch it back and you go, but no one laughed. Like it's sort of like, that's the indicator. Even if it's not that funny, but you've got a huge audience laugh, the person watching will go, that was, like, in their head, they go, that was really funny. Like, all those people are laughing. I find it funny too, even if they
What are your
really
thoughts
don't.
on adding canned laughter then?
No. I think
I'm
that's
joking.
cheating. I know people who do it. And
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is that a thing that happens?
Yeah, people do it. Or like they really boost up the levels. Or they'll take laughs from another spot and put it in.
Wow.
Yeah.
God, my audio editing's not good enough to do that.
Mine kinda either, yeah.
Hear the clunk
Yeah.
between the two.
Yeah, well, sometimes you can hear the clank, or like haven't cut it up at the right time, so it all of a sudden is like, ah, like no one laughs like bang straight out of the gate.
It's like a,
like you have to start. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's like a bell curve.
it's got a shape.
But in terms of that, like I love putting out my clips that I'm just sort of like, I almost want to put out clips that I'm like, come to my shows and let's have fun.
Which I was going to say, I think if there's anything that links the stuff you do that I've seen online, is it genuinely looks like you're having fun.
Yes.
Yours is joyful content that you're
Yes.
putting out. Like you're just mucking around with people, or like,
Yeah.
whether that's in an audience or you're on the street sometimes doing little
vox pops,
vox
which
pops.
I adore. I find them so much fun. But I guess the whole thing is trying to get out exactly what I do on stage, so people, when they'll come and they'll realize that they go, this is the sort of vibe I
This
want
is
to
smart.
be part of. This girl is going to give that vibe. It's like, I'd love it if they blew up, and like Luke Kidgel. Do you know Luke? Yeah. So his is sort of like this, like I watched all his stuff and I was like, great, you know exactly what you're going to get with Luke. And he's got so many followers that they all go, we want to see this stuff. We'll go to his shows. It's the same sort of thing. I'm putting out all these like just fun things. So hopefully people go, oh, I want to be like picked on in a nice way.
Yeah.
I say some
I wanna
horrendous
interact.
things. I say some horrendous things to people, but I'm like smiling and I go like, oh, what a bitch afterwards. Like, so it's all fine.
Yeah.
Like there's been barely any like times where people like actually offended or upset, even though I said some rough shit.
That's a nice place to play though, like where you can be cheeky without offending.
Yeah, I
And
can
that's-
be.
And really walk that line, like find that line, which is, I don't know, that I can see though. That's a fun place to play as a comedian too, like when you're on stage doing crowd work. So, and that's smart. That because I'm big on this. People trying to build an audience online. Sometimes I don't think everyone thinks about what the audience is that they're trying to build. Like the idea that you're trying to get the people, if you like this, you'll like to come to my show and watch this. Whereas I think sometimes sometimes it can be like, well, you need to get followers, so just do whatever you can to get followers. And then they come to see your stand-up and it's not the same
I'm very conscious of that.
point of view.
Mel Buttle, I was
Yep.
listening to her interview with Will Anderson. And so
I don't know either of those names.
Yeah, no, they're new.
Yeah.
They're new. So she has that really famous character, the mum.
mum, yeah.
And it's like she has this issue now where she has to be like, this mum's not going to be in my show. Like, don't come expecting this mum. Like, she's essentially like, I'm screaming it into all the socials and everyone goes, can't wait to see like the mum come out. And she's just like, no. Like, and it's the same with Jenny Tian was telling me that she's got this great presence of like things in Sydney versus things in Melbourne, and like things growing up with Chinese parents versus like Australian parents and like things like that. And so she does a lot of great videos like that, and they're so funny, and people like love them, so they come to her show expecting something similar, and then she brings out her stand-up comedy, which again is funny, but it's just different. And so she says like a lot of the time people sort of like, what's going on? Like, what is this? So I'm conscious of like I'd love to have the thing where it's like, oh, she's the Vox Pop girl, but I don't want people thinking that I'm going to be on the stage like Vox popping everyone. Like, even though it kind of is, but it's a bit different. I just want them to see
as long
me.
as like it doesn't need to be like the exact same thing. I think like if people come along and they think they're getting Vox Pops in a theatre show, then part of that's on them.
Yeah.
As long as you're giving them the same sense of humour,
Yeah.
like so they can follow the sensibility. I think that's the
It's just
smart
like
way.
we're going to be a bit cheeky to people.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's that's a really cool way of approaching it. So, all right then. Oh, the one thing I had to ask you is apparently you are into sports as well,
I would say more than a lot of other comedians.
which isn't.
But I was
much.
worried you're going to be like, who's your favourite player? And I'd be like, I don't know.
So Gundagai, Raiders fan
No, we have always been,
or AFL? Because Gundagai's right on that. The Riverina
half of us
is
are...
half AFL, half.
Oh, sorry,
rugby
no, that's a
league.
lie. Gundagai,
Is rugby league
the
territory?
only sport that exists is rugby league. Wagga,
Yeah, Wagga's.
half is AFL, half is NRL. And then there's a gorgeous little group as well that's like union.
Yes. Aren't they
So-
nice? The hanky carriers.
So it was rugby league
Yep.
growing up and still Rabbitohs.
Rabbitohs.
Yes, and I was really into it in that beautiful period of the Burgess brothers. And for some reason, I was really into it then. And like Wayne Bennett and
Yep.
everything. Moved to Wagga and then realised that there's a sport called AFL. Like literally realised there was a sport
And
called
if you
AFL.
think the Burgess brothers are hunky, there's
Yes.
a whole sport of hunks.
And it sort of turned from like, oh, boys with like big built boys with thick neck, that's hot. And then it got to, oh no, like lean muscled boys.
Lean
that's
boys
hot.
with big arms. That's
Yeah,
hot.
like, oh,
Yeah.
that's hot. I haven't been as into AFL. I like to go to, like I would never probably watch a game on TV, but I like to go to them live.
Live AFL, and I'll say this like as someone who's worked in rugby league a lot, and apparently you have to pick a side. I don't really believe that.
Yeah.
But AFL is way better live
Yeah.
because you can't get the camera far enough back to give you the context and also make sense
See what's
of the
happening
game.
there, but see what everyone else is doing and
Yeah.
everyone else is moving around.
Whereas rugby league I think to its own detriment sometimes in terms of live attendance. It's played on a field that's the same shape as the TV.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah.
It just lines up perfectly. You
Yeah.
can't. It's a beautiful TV sport. So
It's so true, yeah, it is. And like you can get the camera like perfectly, like,
Yeah.
oh, we've got the width of the field, like so we can see them all like running. Very true. And then the last thing, when I went to the uni sport was union.
okay.
And they had a girls' team and I played union for 3 years.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
What position?
So it was women's sevens.
Oh,
and I
nice.
wasn't very good and I was a bit scared, so I always just hung out on the wing.
So you quick though?
Quicker than a few, like quick enough to be put out on the wing.
Wow.
But not quick
Because
that someone would come run past
sevens
me.
is a quick sport.
Sevens goes for 14 minutes, 2 7-minute half, and you are on the same sized field and you are just sprinting. And also like sprinting and then getting tackled by someone
Yep.
sprinting at the same, oh my God. I'd see them coming, I'd just be like, ah.
And the thing with union as opposed to league is the league is very high impact, stop, get
Yeah.
up. So it's short bursts, whereas you get hit and then you've got to still keep thinking about, oh shit, how do I get this ball back?
And
to
you like have to think while you're getting hit how you're going to like
Yeah.
land properly.
No, fall the
in
different
the
way, you
best-
idiot.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
while also trying to stop yourself while, thankfully sevens like you'd sort of only have one person over the top of you, whereas
Yeah.
like 15s you have like 6 people on each team,
Yeah,
and all of a
just
sudden there's
cleaning
someone
out.
just in the bottom. Oh my God. And now we're getting more into football, soccer.
Oh wow.
After going over the UK,
Yep.
the boyfriend was mad into Man City.
Yep.
And again, I was in a golden age of Man City.
I was going to
then.
say you can find a team that's in a golden period.
We had Aguero. They'd won, I think, 3 out of 4 of their trophies they were going for. We had like Aguero, Company, and Pep. Pep's still there, but like a lot of them are still there and everything.
Yeah.
But it was like a little golden age.
Yeah,
of-
well, they basically bought the Premier League.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
I like did a tour of their stadium as well, and
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, oh my God, like this is amazing. And my partner had to be like, no one else's stadiums look like. Like, you know, there's some good stadiums and everything, but like their change room, because we went through change rooms and everything.
There's a lot of oil money in here.
Yes.
Are you familiar with the term sports washing?
Yes. Yes, so it is very, because you also see at the games, I'll be like, oh, and here's the owners, and they're like clearly like Middle East, and just being like, hi, and you're like, this is odd coming from a Labour, Man City is like, you know, from the people
Especially
who are
Man
working.
City being, as opposed to the late 90s when Man U were the glamour club.
Yeah.
And Man City were really
It
just...
was like, we're just the battlers.
Yeah.
And because it's like everyone in Manchester, like who lives, except for Salford, they all go for Man United, but essentially everyone else, you're not a true Manchester person, Mancunian, if you go for Manchester United, like we bleed blue and shit like that. And so, yeah, you got to be. But yeah, and then they've got all this money and they're a prissy team now. But anyway,
Hey.
don't tell him I said that.
So I didn't get an AFL team out of you.
If I had to choose, it would either be Swans or GWS. Probably more GWS because they had a bigger impact in Wagga, so I'd see them a lot more. They come down. They've drafted a lot of our Wagga boys, little boys I went to school with. So I like them.
Fantastic. All right, now last thing, people going to come see you do your crowd work / material show.
Yes.
Your fun, interactive stand-up comedy night.
I love the word interactive. Yes.
So Sydney Comedy Festival, dates and location.
Do I do it to you or do I do it down there?
Either way.
I'll do it to you. That's weird.
Okay.
Down the barrel. I'm working in TV. I'm still not used to down the barrel.
Haven't got an auto cue.
I need my auto cue. Yeah. So I am at the Laneway at the Enmore Theatre.
Nice.
And I've got
love that little room. That's cool.
Yeah, it's
such
nice
a nice
isn't
room.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And this will be my first time sort of at any Enmore Theatre venue as well. So very excited about that.
Nice. Tell you that. And the good thing about the Laneway now is they don't have to. When I did, first year I did, maybe even the second year I did it, they had to still come in through the back of the big theatre.
Yes.
Before the renos.
Yes.
And so you'd have this
Now they've got
audience
their
come through going, oh no,
And they
this
go,
is something
"Oh,
different.
Is she in here?
Yeah. But
No, it's going to be a perfect room as well, so I
awesome.
can see everyone.
Yeah, and it's exactly the right dimensions and the right feel for the kind of show you're going to do. So that's fantastic.
Very
venue.
excited. And that is on May 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th. I've got 4 shows.
Wow.
I'm very excited.
What time?
Yes. 9:30.
9:30. That is a fun time of night
Yeah,
too.
I'm hoping that like I get the sort of people that are keen for comedy and they go, oh, what else should we go see?
Yep.
Let's go see this girl. And I'm also hoping for returners because they'll get a different show each time.
That's that type of show. That's one of the beautiful things about doing that type of show is you can get people come back multiple times and enjoy themselves. Now, people can find details obviously on your social media for that. Plug your social media.
Yes.
Where can they find you?
So my biggest one would be Instagram, where I put out most of my stuff, is at the Freya Reviews. And also on TikTok at the Freya Reviews if you want to see, that has like a lot more silly fun content. But a lot of my dates and like, upcoming gigs and stuff like that on Instagram.
Excellent. Freya, thank you so much for doing this.
Can I just say one thing before we go?
Yes.
We had a gig at the Red Lion Hotel together in Rozelle.
Yes.
And you said one of the funniest things. This was probably about 8-10 months ago. And I still think about it a lot.
Oh, really?
You asked, did this ask you like, how long have you guys been together? And they'd been together for, say, like 30 years or something. You're like, whoa, 30 years, give that a round of applause. And you're like, can anyone beat that? And there were these old as hell couples up the back. And this woman called like Margaret or something was like full on frail hand. She's like, yes. And you're like, how long? Like, you're like, what's your name? She's like, Margaret. And you're like, how long you been? And she was like, 56 years or something. And you're like, oh my God, 50. And people like all clapping. And you're like, fucking big dick swinging Margaret's popped it out on the table and literally did that as well. And this poor old woman up the back, I could not stop laughing. And she was full on like, what? Like she didn't quite get what you said.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
I think about that a lot.
Oh, excellent. Margaret, the big dick. I do love that when people just like, 30 years, that's cute.
Yeah, like literally was that.
Cop that.
She was like full on was like, I've got a better one than that.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that. I
welcome.
don't know if Margaret did, to be honest.
I don't think she even heard it.
No. Freya, thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers.